Can an EV save you money? It's a good question, but kind of tricky to answer. See, electric vehicle advocates have been saying that EVs can be 5 to 6 times cheaper per mile than gas vehicles. And recently, gas prices have been on a wild ride. And Joe Biden has said he wants to
lower the price of electric vehicles, saving another $80 a month that you're not going to have to pay at the pump.
It's led to a lot of people researching if an EV could be cheaper for them.
We've seen people just in a frenzy almost doing research on what green vehicles are out there.
But trying to figure out how an EV stacks up against a gas vehicle isn't exactly straightforward.
It's hard to get an apples to apples comparison.
So to help you folks out, I've pulled together a bunch of resources that can help you figure out if an EV could fit in your life and save you money. Let's dive in. Okay, let's start with range, because according to analysts, it's one of the top concerns that buyers have.
Although ranges are getting a lot better, I think people still have in the back of their mind is, what if I just want to get up and drive to Texas one day? Most people aren't going to do that in reality.
If you're in the US and you want to know the range of your EV, then look no further than this, the Monroney sticker. It's packed with info about your potential new car, and if you don't know how to read it, don't worry, there's a guide to understanding it on the EPA's website. But what you really want to focus on is up in the top left. This shows you the range of that EV on a full charge, and it tells you how highway or city driving might affect that range. But all that information is kind of useless unless you know what your driving habits are. And I mean what they really are, not what you want them to be.
We buy vehicles based on that one camping trip we're going to go on in 5 years.
Now, personally, I think there are two figures you need to consider. The first is average daily mileage, as this will give you an idea of how often you might need to charge. For me, I do about 20 miles a day, so that means if I had a pure electric Kia Niro, I could probably make it the whole week without having to plug in. Secondly, it's worth knowing what a longer distance trip might look like, as this will tell you if you ever need to think about charging en route. Now for me, that's a 280-mile round trip to go and see my mum and dad, which means that I could probably make it there without charging, but would need to plug in order to make it back home. Mileage tracking apps like TripLog and MileIQ can give you an idea of how many miles you're currently driving. And if the car you're looking at doesn't quite cover you for the range you want, try checking out the Department of Energy's EV rankings, where you can see which cars offer the most range. Fortunately, I can tell you this. The average US commute to work is 27 minutes long, which means that even if you drove the whole thing at 60 miles an hour, most modern EVs should be able to get you there and back on a single charge. Speaking of charging, best figure out where you're going to plug your new EV in.
The third highest reason why people did not want to think about buying an EV was that EVs are a hassle. And I think charging times really figure into that.
If you're lucky enough to have a garage or a parking space on your property, then you can plug straight into a standard outlet. But be warned, charging through a household outlet is far slower than through a dedicated EV charger. If you want faster charging, you might want to invest in something called a level 2 charger, which will charge your vehicle quicker. But if you don't have a parking space, you're probably going to have to find a public charger. Fortunately, websites like PlugShare can let you figure out where your nearest public charger might be, and it can be used to help you find charging points on longer journeys too. If there isn't one where you need one, well, Biden's trying to change that.
We'll build a national network of 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations.
So if range and charging haven't put you off buying an EV, could one save you money? Well, it's no secret that electric vehicles tend to be more expensive to purchase than their internal combustion engine counterparts. My colleague Mike Colias has been covering the EV market right now.
There's so few of these models, they're just now coming out. The car companies want to sort of put all the bells and whistles on there. And so, they're naturally going to have more content on an EV than they would on just, the average gas-powered version.
I mean, the average vehicle in the United States, like total across the market, is about $46,000. Right now, the average price for a battery electric vehicle in the United States is $60,000.
In the US, there's some federal and state incentives to try and bring that cost down. If you want to know what incentives might apply to you, then check out the Alternative Fuels Data Center, which has a full list.
For the most part, people can expect $7,500 back in a tax credit. There are states that are pretty generous. You can get another few thousand. So, if you bought in the right state, you can get as much as $10,000 or even more paid for by the government.
Even with those incentives, it's often still more expensive to buy an electric vehicle than it is to buy a comparable gas vehicle. But given that electricity is cheaper than gasoline in some states, there is the potential to claw back that price difference over time. How long depends on those gas prices and how far you drive. But even if range, charging and cost are all working in your favour, There's one big thing that's stopping you from driving away with a new EV today, and that's availability.
I talked to a buyer down in Texas. He got on a waiting list in May of 2021. He doesn't expect a truck before the end of 2023, maybe even spilling into 2024. By the time these things hit the market, it's already a long waiting list for him.
And that's the problem. If concerns about fluctuating gas prices leads you to purchase an EV today, you're not actually protecting yourself from today's gas prices. You're effectively taking a gamble on what gas prices might be in 9 months to 2 years, or whenever you get to drive the thing. So figuring out if it could really save you money might require a crystal ball. Hey, do you know why it's called a Monroney sticker? It's named after a US politician called Mike Monroney, who sponsored a 1958 act requiring retail price and other information to be displayed on all new cars. So now you know. And if you want to know more, don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.